strength. His teachings were later compiled into sutras, and numerous schools of Buddhism sprang up as his teachings spread after his death. The Lotus Sutra is a highly revered sutra of the Mahayana tradition, which reached East Asia. It emphasizes the Bodhisattva ideal of helping others to come to a true understanding of life and clarifies that all people possess the life state of Buddhahood. Nichiren, a 13th century Japanese priest, found that the Lotus Sutra contained the fullest expression of Shakyamuni's compassionate intention. The core element of Buddhist practice, as conducted by members of the SGI, is chanting the phrase Nam-myoho Renge Kyo, or devotion to the Lotus Sutra, which was identified by the 13th century Japanese priest Nichiren as a key to developing the Buddha nature. Chanting Nam-myoho Renge Kyo enables people to unleash their hidden potential and unlock the courage and compassion to transform their lives and create positive value in their family, community, and society. Members usually chant to a mandala called a gohonzon, which is enshrined in their homes. This primary practice is supported by reciting passages of the Lotus Sutra as well as studying Buddhist teachings. Another key activity is the discussion meeting, which provides members and guests with the opportunity to share their experiences in faith and support and learn from others. The practice of Buddhism is proactive and engaged with society, and members of the SGI are active in all walks of life as citizens working towards a better world. Throughout this many-part series, we will be discussing various Buddhist concepts and their value and importance. Point 5. The Voice of Stockton. Core Buddhist principles include human revolution, a process of inner transformation and of bringing forth one's full positive human potential, compassion, or the altruistic action that seeks to relieve living beings from suffering and help them attain absolute happiness, creating value, the positive aspects of reality generated when we creatively engage with the challenges of daily life, interconnectedness, or the interconnectedness of life and the idea that nothing exists in isolation, independent of other life, wisdom, that which directs knowledge toward good, toward the creation of value, and finally, treasuring diversity, or an attitude of fundamental respect toward all cultures and every individual, treasuring our differences. Other interesting Buddhist concepts consist of the Lotus Sutra, the Middle Way, the 9 consciousnesses, observing the precepts, the oneness of body and mind, the oneness of mentor and disciple, the oneness of self and environment, practice for oneself and others, the 10 factors, the 10 worlds, 3 poisons, the treasure tower, the enlightenment of women, the eternity of life, faith and reason, good and evil, good friends, gratitude, the greater self, karma, kosun rufu, and 3,000 realms in a single moment of life. Thanks to the website sgi.org as a source. If you are interested, please check out the site. This has been Wagio Collins with KWDC 93.5, The Voice of Stockton.
Movie releases, DVD rentals, and more here on the Movie Talk on KWDC 93.5 FM.
What's up, everyone? You are listening to KWDC LP Stockton. This is Movie Talk. I am your host, Alan Jared Raquel, here with Alton Henry, Brian Seals, and Brett Seals. Today is May 28th, and in 1998, this is the day that, unfortunately, Phil Hartman died under some very tragic circumstances. Well, we won't talk about it. There's some very dark subject
Just
matter
a tragic.
behind his death. But yeah, so rest in peace, Phil Hartman. And on a much lighter note, today we're going to be talking about childhood movies. Today is Throwback Thursday, so we're talking about all the films that influenced us as children to want to be filmmakers today. These are the films we still watch to this very day that give us inspiration, that give us hope towards the future of film. So let's start things off. First film we want to talk about is one of the most beloved children movies of all time, and that's The Goonies. I actually didn't watch this one as much as a kid. I grew up in the 90s. I was more of a 90s. But Brian, I know you watched this one a lot.
Oh, I always watch this movie. This movie, to me, never gets old. To me, it's one of those movies where, like, growing up as a kid watching it, it kind of just made you want to get together with your friends and go on a little adventure.
Yeah, I mean, despite the fact that it came out in '85, it was still a movie that I watched in the in the '90s because I just love. I mean, Chunk and Sloth, the gang. It was great.
Yeah, I watched this as a kid a few times, but I never got quite as into it as other people did.
I watched it when I was in high school, in my junior year. In a class. And that was the first time I ever watched
Really?
it.
In a class? Wow.
I'm surprised they showed that in class.
Yeah. I wish I kind of caught up to the movie more.
Yeah, there's a lot of adult humor in the Goonies.
I didn't realize that was Josh Brolin's first movie.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It was.
Yeah.
It was the debut of Josh
Oh
Brolin.
yeah, I always forget about that. He's still a kid. Oh, he was an older kid.
Yeah,
An older
Still a
kid, yeah.
Yeah, and, his voice got a lot deeper.
Well, it's too like when I remember watching this movie and it's still today a cult classic because I mean it goes over from generation to generation. And it's been a movie that's been talked about for a sequel for a long time.
Oh, I hope it doesn't happen. Honestly, I hope Goonies never gets a sequel.
Even
It's
if
a
the
great
original
sequel.
cast came back? All
Yeah,
of them? Really?
it's a kids movie, and that's what makes the magic of Goonies is that they're kids. Nobody wants to see a bunch of 40-year-old
Adults.
men go on an adventure together.
I can't see Josh Brolin going back into like a kids movie.
But what if it was their kids that went on adventure? And they were still in the movie, but it was, all the original cast's kids that
It
did
could be interesting, but I think this is a great standalone film, and I think it's from a different era of children's movies. This is an era where PG-13 didn't exist. Back in the day, you could get away with more adult humor in a kids movie. Today, you can't have that same vibe, that same feel in children's films, unfortunately. So yeah, I mean they cuss in this movie. There's
They say the
jokes
B word. Up in there. I mean, when I watched, actually not. I only saw the movie once, so I can't really give it a good.
Yeah,
I was gonna go. Yeah.
Yeah, and I mean, a character like Sloth from The Goonies, for instance, you can't have him in a kid's movie today because kids get so scared, Parents are too sensitive nowadays, Stuff we grew up with back then, it was a lot, there were a lot less boundaries.
Yeah, a lot of free range.
And Sloth technically couldn't even be in the sequel, couldn't he? Isn't he dead? The guy that played him?
I believe so, yeah.
So, no Sloth.
It's not like he's not, recastable or anything.
Or they would just CGI him entirely, probably.
Andy Serkis as Sloth.
Yeah. Giving him work. Hey, he gets work all the time for that.
He works in everything.
Anyway, all right, so, yeah.
Caesar
now-
plays Sloth.
So now here's another one I didn't watch a lot, but I know you guys, this is a very special movie to you or to anyone who's involved with sports or who likes sports, and that's The Sandlot.
Oh yeah, I watched it.
You liked it, Alton?
Yeah, I liked it. Yeah, it was a good.
It's a great
Yeah,
film.
Yeah.
It reminds me of the Goonies in a few ways,
Yeah.
with the adult humor,
a little
with
bit.
yeah. But I never got into this film. I was never into sports as a kid. That's probably why. But
Well,
Yeah.
there's only certain movies out there that I can remember, like where it involved baseball, and there's not a whole lot of movies out there that I like that
Angels
involve
in the
baseball.
Outfield?
Angels in the Outfield.
Well,
yeah.
besides Angel, I mean, you have like Field of Dreams and whatnot, and this, I mean, Sandlot kind of is on that list to me of great baseball movies.
It spawned too many terrible sequels. Though.
Yeah, that's the only problem
way
with that
too
with this
many.
one.
I didn't even know there was more than one sequel.
Yeah,
but I think
yeah.
I did see part of one of the sequels.
I
and
actually lost count.
It hurt me.
I think there's like 4 of them.
Yeah, I lost
Yeah,
count.
there is. The little kid from Bad Santa is in one of them. It's so bad.
yeah.
It's terrible.
Ooh, I didn't know about that.
It's bad.
Wow,
bad,
Brian, do you have any fun facts for this one other than that? Or?
For The Sandlot,
Yeah.
I do. The writer and director, which is David Evans, was the narrator of the film.
Which I never knew. That's crazy.
Yeah, I didn't know that either. For all those independent filmmakers out there, if you want to have vomit in your movie and don't really know how to go about doing that, there's a scene in the film where their vomit was pertained into a carnival scene. The vomit they used was made from split pea soup, baked beans, oatmeal, a little water, and some movie gel.
Ugh.
Sounds awful.
And
This is the most horrible thing I've ever heard in my life.
That scene was so memorable when I watched it.
It gets better. They actually used paint guns to discharge it throughout the scene, and actually nailed a few people in real life by accident.
Oh.
Ooh.
That's gross.
Yeah, I mean, at least it wasn't, real vomit or
Yeah.
anything.
What if
but
anybody
It's
got
still-
sued on that?
It's still pretty disturbing not
I'm
knowing
gonna
at
lie,
first.
I hate baked beans. I don't like split pea soup, so just all of that stuff to me just sounds
To be on you,
horrid.
That's
yeah.
that's gross.
Yeah.
Sounds scrumptious, guys. I don't know what you're talking about.
So now, let's talk about a few movies that we watched as a kid that weren't necessarily kids movies. I mean, a lot of the most influential films of my childhood I know were rated R or
Terminator.
Yeah,
Classic.
yeah.
Terminator, Die Hard, yeah.
Yeah, and I think it's important to understand that because a lot of kids nowadays are getting raised on kind of some like really mind-numbing stuff. Like with the cartoons and stuff, they're meant to be as dumb as possible. Just I feel like when we were kids, we could handle the more mature content. So let's talk about some of those films for a second. First off, being Spaceballs. Now I know this isn't the best example because it's not the smartest movie, but I mean,
this movie never gets old.
So like the humor in this film is so classic. Like a lot of comedies now, especially spoof movies today, there's no effort that goes into them. And Spaceballs was a film that, I mean, it's a classic on its own, even though it's meant to make fun of another film, Star Wars.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And a little bit of Star Trek.
Yeah, a little bit, yeah.
It's just science fiction in general. And that's the thing about Spaceballs is that despite the fact that it is a parody, it has its own original humor.
Mm-hmm.
Not every scene is meant to replicate a scene from Star Wars or from Star Trek. It's all just,
It's just making fun of a whole sci-fi because you
Yeah.
have Planet of the Apes in there as well.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. There's a lot of great humor in this film.
I just know that the dude with the glasses,
Rick Moranis.
Yeah.
he was in Ghostbusters. I know he's
Yeah.
in it. I haven't seen the movie.
Dude,
Dark Helmet.
He's a part of our childhood from like the early 80s to the 90s.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, Rick
he was
Moranis
like,
is-
everywhere.
Yeah, Rick Moranis is in like some of the greatest kids movies of all time. Honey, I Shrunk the Kids.
Do you guys remember Little Giants? That was
Yeah,
that was a sports movie too.
Football movie.
Yeah, no. See,
Me and Brian.
No, I haven't seen that.
Oh man.
I have vaguely remember the VHS like trailers for that
Yeah.
film.
I haven't seen
but I never saw
Spaceballs,
it.
guys. I'm sorry.
Spaceballs.
You
You
haven't
need
seen
to watch
Spaceballs?
it.
I haven't
Mel
seen Spaceballs.
Brooks.
If you're a
genius.
big Mel Brooks fan, you have to watch Spaceballs because out of all of his spoof movies, to me, this is by far the best one.
And there might be a sequel to it,
Yes.
which will be.
I
exciting.
heard that they've been trying to do that for quite some time.
Yeah.
Yeah. If it's on demand, I'll watch it.
Yeah, it's definitely worth the watch. It's
All right, now,
hilarious.
let me go ahead and put that.
Yeah,
list of
it's
mo-
Spaceballs is a funny movie. It still lives up. I can never get tired of watching this movie.
Yeah, the humor still holds up. None of it got outdated because back then, unlike nowadays, comedies didn't go for cheap pop culture references. Because I feel like comedies that do that nowadays are instantly outdated the next year because those pop culture references nobody really understands anymore.
Yeah.
All right, so we're going to keep talking about childhood movies, but first we're going to take a quick break. So we'll be back in a few minutes. Please stay tuned. You're listening to Movie Talk on KWDC.
Okay, so just type the job website address here. That's it. Then you enter what job you're looking for there.
Electrician.
This is Peter. Recently, he got help going on the internet for the first time to look for a new job.
Okay, then you just hit search and...
In the past, Peter's gotten work through people he knew, but he heard there were more jobs online.
there we go.
These are all for me?
Uh-huh.
Really?
He had no idea just how many.
I can't believe it. This one looks good.
Peter is thinking the internet might be for him after all.
And this is just one website.
Wow. Why didn't I do this sooner?
See what the internet can help you do at everyoneon.org or call 1-855-387-9166 to find a free training class near you. Brought to you by Connect to Compete and the Ad Council.
What do your status updates say? You're learning a new language? Going all organic? Instead of typing your feelings, what if you could put them into action? By creating a network to help keep kids off the streets in a country like Armenia or in Honduras, bringing IT into the classroom, or on a farm in Tanzania, helping stem the world's food crisis by creating a sustainable agricultural program. What if every ounce of your being helped update the status of a person, and in turn they did the same for you? Would this be enough social interaction? Or is this only the beginning of something larger? Life is calling. How far will you go? Peace Corps. Get interactive at peacecorps.gov/game.
The forest is a treasured and magical place.
Hello, Bambi. Hello, little prince. Hello. Hello there.
But a wildfire can destroy its beauty for a lifetime. It's always wildfire season somewhere in America. Nearly 9 out of 10 wildfires nationwide are caused by the carelessness of humans and could be prevented. But together, we can make a difference.
Watch what I can do.
Help protect the home of our forest friends.
He can call me a flower if he wants to.
To find out more, log on to SmokeyBear.com.
Only you can prevent wildfires.
This message has been brought to you by the U.S. Forest Service, the National Association of State Foresters, and the Ad Council.
Come on! You can do it!
You're listening to the Movie Talk on KWDC 93.5 FM.
Welcome back, everyone. You are listening to Movie Talk on KWDC. I'm your host, Alan Jared Raquel, here with Alton Henry, Brian Seals, and Brett Seals. We're talking about the films that influenced us as children that make us want to make movies today. So I think we're going to take some time to really go around, and each of us is going to bring up some films that we watched as a kid that were very specific to us, inspired us personally. So we're going to start off with Brian. Brian, is there any films on this list that like really struck a personal chord with you that you still watch today?
Well, pretty much the whole list does. But I mean, if I have to pick one, I would probably have to say E.T.
E.T.? Yeah, E.T. was a big one for all of us. And what?
I saw that at high school too. I didn't see it at high school.
Yeah.
If high school didn't show you these films, you probably would have to.
What class were you in when you watched these movies?
I was in English class.
What?
Well, no, I know what he was referring to, because there's times where you were in class and like it would be the Friday and like your teacher would let you watch a film.
Yeah, unfortunately, I didn't see this when I was a kid.
Yeah, so Brian, now what is it about E.T. for you that was the most influential aspect of the film?
It was something different. I mean, obviously, because I'm always a believer of the unknown. I believe in aliens. I believe in the paranormal. And just seeing this as a kid, a young boy who befriends an alien, it was something different that I've never seen before. So it was amazing to see on the big screen.
Yeah, this is definitely a very different type of alien invasion film. It's not the typical monster movie that was so popular back in the day. It's
more of a friend movie.
Yeah.
You know, that's the movie I grew up watching.
What?
Alien.
Oh, yeah. There you go.
And Independence Day.
Nice.
So I'm sorry, E.T. That waited till I was in high school.
Yeah, but E.T. is great because it's smarter than most children's films, especially for the children's films that are released today. This film actually has social commentary and has, a message. And I think it's a message that really influenced, us as a kid and kind of shaped who we are today about, respecting one another and, not jumping to conclusions about people who are different. I mean, obviously, it's a film about an alien, but, I think it is a very relevant message, to us. And also, the special effects in this film are great. I mean, the special effects, I just watched E.T. pretty recently, and one of the things that stood out to me is that it's a 30-year-old film, and the special effects still hold up much better.
Steven Spielberg just nailed it.
Yeah, I mean, the special effects in this movie hold up so much better than films that were released in 2010.
Oh, I agree.
Yeah, like there are times watching this film, seeing E.T. himself, where I thought to myself, how did they even do that? And it's like I said, it's a 30-year-old film, and E.T. is one of those creatures in movies that he actually feels like a living, breathing character. and that's something that's a lost art form. You know, it's easy to make a motion capture or make something CGI have all these facial expressions, but when you're working with a puppet and you can make it be that expressive and give it so much personality, it really blows my mind, and it's something that is kind of a lost art form in Hollywood, and I wish that more filmmakers would do it today. Hopefully with the release of something like Jurassic World, they'll go back to that, to practical effects.
I've seen the trailers, man. They totally seem to ignore that.
See, now the trailers look like they have a lot of CGI, but from statements that I've read in the past, it sounds like they want to go more practical. Steven Spielberg gave us some of the most influential films when we were kids, and the Indiana Jones trilogy for me, especially personally to me, Temple of Doom was the one I always watched the most as a kid.
That's the one I watched too as a kid.
Yeah, and a lot of people don't like that one, but for me, Temple of Doom was the most interesting one, I think. I don't know, maybe because there was a kid character in it.
That's exactly what I was saying.
Yeah, Short Round is one of the most awesome, hardcore child characters in film, and I think that was always something that was cool to see as a kid. Was a kid who could take on the adults. And who was, he was an equal to Indiana Jones. He
did not back down one bit.
Yeah, you got to go on the adventure with him. That was that's what was so exciting.
You guys are. Well, I really want to watch it now.
Alton, I don't know how you've made it so long without watching the Indiana Jones films.
He didn't get to see it in class.
Yeah, unfortunately, guys. I mean, they have it in the library, but I haven't checked it out.
That was probably a suggestion in class, and they skipped it.
Maybe. I don't know.
Everybody voted against it.
I don't know if it's just me going back to E.T., but anytime you guys watch it, did you ever have a craving for Reese's Pieces afterwards?
Oh,
I did.
Every time.
No.
Is that one of your fun facts?
It actually is.
Yeah, go ahead, because I already know this one.
Well, the filmmakers actually they wanted M&Ms to be used to lure E.T. instead of Reese's Pieces, but the Mars company denied the request, so Reese's Pieces were used instead. The film was a big success that the sales of Reese's Pieces skyrocketed, and ever since that point, a lot of other companies began requesting that their products be used in movies, thus beginning the birth of product placement.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I'm not going to lie, to this day, I wouldn't know what Reese's Pieces are if it weren't for E.T.
E.T. loves Reese's Pieces.
He does. He ate them.
But, and Spielberg gave us some of the more, for years he gave us some of the most influential films as children. Another one I want to bring up is Jurassic Park.
Yep.
That was amazing.
I think, we all saw Jurassic Park. Even when I watch it today, I feel like a little kid again watching it. It's a movie that, it is technically, I think, a family film. I would consider it to be a family film. It has kids in it.
Yeah, like what kid don't like dinosaurs, man? If they don't like dinosaurs, something wrong too.
Yeah, when I was a kid, I was really into dinosaurs, which is, I think most children were at some point.
I think they still are. When I remember this movie come out, it opened the door for the graphic effects because this, like when people saw Jurassic Park, we were seeing something that has never been done before.
Yeah, it was the first of its kind, really.
Yeah, and the CGI, while it doesn't hold up 100% well today, it's still, for the time, it looked really good, and it allowed them to tell that story in a different way, without worrying about technical limitations, and the practical effects still look perfect today. They still look absolutely perfect, and there is a lot of use of, despite the big CGI moments, there are a lot of use of practical effects in Jurassic Park. For instance, in my opinion, the best scene in the entire film is when the T-Rex attacks their...
Was the first time the T-Rex showed up when it was raining? Yeah, I know which part you're talking about.
It's raining, and because, when you see the wide shots of the T-Rex, obviously those are it's a complete CGI T-Rex. But when you get up close... And he's banging on the roof of the car and flipping the car over, and you can see those up close shots. You're actually seeing a giant mechanical T-Rex head that's slamming down, trying to get at these children. And that, to me, as a kid, was infinitely more realistic and terrifying than all the CGI scenes. Even though, as a kid, I'll admit I didn't notice the CGI nearly as much as I do now.
That whole scene was amazing. Just like the build up, the anticipation, seeing the water shake.
Yeah, and that's another thing is I brought up earlier that this is technically I would consider to be a family film, and it was terrifying. You know, Spielberg wasn't afraid to make a really to make us feel like these children were gonna die. You know, like and you know obviously they didn't die in the end, but it's one of those films that it's that type of family film they don't make anymore. And I feel like Hollywood is really kind of coming back to the whole. A lot of films that come out nowadays, I feel like, are playing off of nostalgia, like Jurassic World, for instance. Mm-hmm. I feel like Hollywood is finally starting to realize that this kind of stuff we got as kids, you know, practical effects, everything. It's
got to come back.
It's what we want to see.
That's why I'm excited for the new Star Wars film.
Yeah,
because it's less CGI and it's more of the old Hollywood, you know, tricks that they did in the original Star Wars movies.
Yeah,
they need to go back to that.
Yeah, and another film that got it right was Mad Max: Fury Road.
Oh yes, thank God that movie was amazing.
Yeah. I think with 2015 we are going to see a resurgence in practical effects because, let's be honest, CGI isn't convincing. Even the best of CGI, it's just not convincing. Our eyes are trained to recognize what is real, what's actually happening, and what's not.
CGI Arnold Schwarzenegger coming up soon.
Yeah. So all right, we got a lot more films to talk about when we come back. So we're gonna take a quick break for a few minutes, but please stay tuned. You're listening to Movie Talk on KWDC.
My name is Ruth Rusi. I'm a retired teacher. I'm 91 years old, and this is how I live united. I say retired, but not really. Once a week, I read books to children as part of United Way's education program. Reading to a child creates links between language and literacy. It creates a bond between grown-up and child. And believe it or not, it prepares them for a better academic future. Oh, we read about frogs and flies and pigs with wings, all sorts of juicy stuff. It's a joy to watch all those little faces. I figure I have the time and they have the need. And I've always believed that if we're not here to help each other, then what are we here for really? My name is Ruth Rusi. I help kids prepare to succeed in school. So I don't just wear the shirt, I live it.
Give, advocate, volunteer, live united. Go to liveunited.org. Brought to you by United Way and the Ad Council.
My hero doesn't wear a cape or have superpowers. She doesn't slay dragons, kill wizards, or beat up bad guys. No one wants my hero's autograph. She never goes to any fancy Hollywood parties, and she definitely doesn't have a star on the Walk of Fame.
My hero doesn't try to sell me soda, candy bars, cereal, or cheeseburgers.
You won't hear my hero song on the radio or see him driving a giant SUV. He doesn't have a crew, bling bling, or a mansion.
You can't buy my hero's makeup line, handmade purses, or designer baby clothes.
My hero didn't win the pennant this year. She can't do a 360 dunk, and there's no way she'll score a touchdown in the Super Bowl.
Some of New York's most admired figures are the city's public school teachers. Just ask one of the millions of kids who learn from these heroes every day. For more information and to sign up for an upcoming career fair, visit teachnyc.net. Join New York's brightest. Teach NYC. A public service announcement brought to you by the New York City Department of Education, the Appleseed Foundation, and the Ad Council.
I know, being a college freshman is supposed to be tough, but let me tell you about my schedule this semester. All 18 credits. Every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, I have American Lit at 8:05 a.m. And then I only have 15 minutes to get to my 9:15 Ethics and Value Theory class, all the way across campus. Then in the afternoon, Calculus 1. On Tuesdays and Thursdays, I have 2 lectures that go through lunch. Sociology of Families, then Intro to Microbiology. Pre-med. And finally, I have a double lab that ends around 9 p.m. Anyway, I just wanted to say thank you.
If a kid will do whatever it takes to get through college, what will you do to send her there? Please support the United Negro College Fund and call 1-800-332-UNCF. Because a mind is a terrible thing to waste. A public service brought to you by UNCF and the Ad Council.
You're listening to KWDC LP Stockton.
Alrighty then. How could I have been so careless? 1.21 gigawatts! I don't even know what that means. No one knows what it means, but it's provocative. No, it's nice.
You blew it! What?
is your name? Movie releases, DVD rentals, and more here on the Movie Talk on KWDC 93.5 FM.
Welcome back, everyone. You're listening to Movie Talk on KWDC. I'm your host, Alan Jared Raquel, here with Alton Henry, Brian Seals, and Brett Seals. We were just talking about the films of our childhood that influenced us when we were kids and that still hold up today. Brett, do you want to talk about any specific film on this list?
Well, I think everybody was probably shown this film when they were little. And I think, it probably meant a lot more to people when it first came out because, just the way they did the film. But The Wizard of Oz, to me, was a film that I think a lot of people can say they remember watching as a child. But what was really cool for me is now, as like a filmmaker, is the way they did the whole story. I can't remember how many minutes it's in black and white. And then the transition into Technicolor at the time was just, I don't know, that's really mind-blowing the way they did it. Like that's probably why it meant more to people back in 1939 when the movie came out. But
yeah, it's such a simple inclusion in the film. It's such a simple way of portraying how awe-inspiring the Land of Oz is supposed to be.
Mm-hmm.
But I got to be honest with you. I've watched this film recently on Blu-ray for the first time, and it blew my mind watching it. Like, it was still like something about that simple technique of showing the first films in the first scenes of the film in Kansas in black and white, and then transitioning. Actually, was it even black and white? Isn't it more like
it was sepia?
Yeah, it's like that brown, ugly color, and then switching to this beautiful color palette that the rest of the film has in the Land of Oz. It blew my mind watching it, on a big TV in color, even though the film is still in its, original 1:3 aspect ratio. Yeah, this is a beautiful looking film, even after all these years. Even though, it's not the most convincing looking film. You watch it, you can tell they're sets. You can tell that everything's filmed in front of a flat background that's painted on a big wooden background. However, there's something extremely beautiful and artistic about the way this film is shot and the way it looks, and there's really nothing else like it. I mean, oddly enough, watching The Wizard of Oz, you can get lost in every scene. I mean, as a kid and, even more so, I feel like now that I'm older. This film has actually aged very well, and I actually appreciate it more now than I did when I was a kid, even though it is a family film.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's a good point, though. I mean, the way it looked, you could totally tell. I mean, it was totally a movie. Like, you knew that, but...
Yeah, you overlook it.
Yeah, you overlook it for some reason, and maybe subconsciously. I don't know if it's like if it's rich in characters or. I mean, the story's very, very just simple and plain.
Yeah.
But I don't know if it's the characters or what it is about that film that just you kind of resonate with it, and just the message at the end. It's just it's a movie that I think is going to live on forever.
It's a film that I think what makes it so special is how much love the filmmakers actually put into it. They didn't treat it necessarily as a kid's film or as, I mean, even though it's one of the most lighthearted, kid-friendly films of all time. I mean, it really, there's so much to love about this film, just from the way it looks, and you can tell everyone involved with the production, put so much of their heart into this film, and that's what makes it special, is that Alton.
I seen parts of it. I didn't see the whole thing.
Yeah, it's. I think it's definitely worth watching and just sitting, even if you don't enjoy it, just to sit down and watch the whole thing from beginning to end.
Yeah, there's just some movies where you have to do that. You just have to sit down and watch it regardless because it's just one of those movies that's just too good.
It isn't only like 80-something minutes long.
Something like that.
Yeah, it's like really short movie. It's perfect, for people of all ages.
I'll get you, my pretty.
But I think it's amazing though. Is like you think of the time that the film was made. I mean, you just look at when you watch the movie that those were all sets. Some of them are pretty massive sets. Like Munchkin Land. It's like wow. They built all of that.
And that's the thing about the sets too, is that while they might not look as convincing as certain things that other films have done, they're fun to look at. They're a lot more love and care and time went into building these sets than filmmakers are willing to put into set production today. And I feel like set production and production design is kind of a lost art form.
Yeah,
like yeah, like something like Wizard of Oz. It's so simple. It honestly, the Wizard of Oz, or the Land of Oz rather, it has always, as a child and even today, has always reminded me of the Mushroom Kingdom from like Super Mario World.
Yeah.
Yeah, it has that whole sparkly glow to it. Brian, do you have any fun facts for this film?
I actually have a couple. Study has claimed that this is actually the most watched movie in film history, largely due to the number of television screenings each year, as well as the various video and DVD releases, which has enabled children of every generation to see it.
Yeah.
That's great, and I hope children never stop experiencing this film. I hope this film is one that lives on forever, because it is one of the greatest children films ever
I
made.
feel like everybody's looking at me because I haven't watched it.
Yeah. Alton, get on it, man.
Well, you see, I don't have Netflix, and it's not on the internet. I don't want to put my credit card.
But Alton,
it's always on TV.
How about it's PG, so it's G, so they shouldn't cut out anything.
Yeah. Anyway, yeah. So, Alton, a lot of these films on this list you haven't seen, but
I've seen a decent amount.
But what strikes me as interesting is that a lot of the films that you've written on this list, the films that inspired you as a kid, are very unique. Or some films on here I haven't seen or even heard of. So, Alton, let's talk about you for a second. What are some of the films that inspired you the most when you were a child?
Okay, that's a tough one because there's a lot of movies that I watched that inspired me to be who wanted to become a filmmaker. Or one is I'll have to say Jumanji.
Okay,
yeah.
Jumanji's a great film.
Yeah, Jumanji is a great film. Actually, it's my favorite Robin Williams film, and I love the theme song in the film. It just resonates with me every time I watch it.
Yeah,
makes me feel like a little kid every time I watch it.
Yeah, and Robin Williams is another one. Like Rick Moranis,
Yeah.
he is one of the biggest actors from our childhood. Yeah, one of my childhood heroes, and it was so sad when he passed because it was almost like we lost a family member.
Yeah, it was.
And guys, I'm sorry to break it to you, but I didn't see much of Miss Doubtfire.
You didn't see Miss Doubtfire?
I've seen parts of it, but it didn't really resonate with me.
Oh man, that one's good too.
Yeah.
But one film that really stand out to me when I was a little kid, when I grew up watching, is Princess Mononoke. It's a 1997 anime film by Hayao Miyazaki. Amazing film about a warrior who gets cursed by a demon, and he travels across Japan to find a cure for the curse until he meets a princess woman who was raised by wolves. And I have to say, this is one of my favorite films growing up. It is a masterpiece. The animation during that time, 1997, was astounding. I watched it on TV on Encore, and I watched half of it, and then when it came on again, I was able to watch the full thing. And to me, what really stand out of that film was that it had an interesting theme song. The music in it was just beautiful.
The music is beautiful.
And what I really think that a lot of kids movies nowadays, that they don't really capture. I don't think they usually in kids movies they usually have like a well-known theme song or something, something that really resonates with kids when they watch the movie, because you can't be a kids movie without having music that's memorable.
Yeah, although
I have to say,
Alton, I hate to break it to you, but Princess Mononoke isn't exactly a children's film.
No, it's not. It's PG-13.
Yeah, it's a cartoon. It is an anime film, but it is very violent.
Yep.
Yeah, there's a lot of dark themes to this film.
Yep.
But I understand.
So is Akira.
Yeah, yeah.
We all have those movies where like we grew up watching, but they're not really childhood.
Spaceballs being one of them.
Yeah. I do love Princess Mononoke, and Studio Ghibli is a studio that produced some of my favorite films as a child. Spirited Away being my big one. I watched that one more than Princess Mononoke.
You're breaking my heart, man.
As a kid,
putting me down.
I watched Princess Mononoke when I was a a little bit older, but as a kid,
I watched it when I was 7.
Yeah, but it is a great film. Anime is definitely something that really became big in the 90s due to Toonami. That's what really got, I think, a lot of 90s kids into anime, watching shows like Dragon Ball Z or for me it was Cowboy Bebop was the one I watched as a kid. I never watched a whole lot of anime. Definitely some of the more influential shows.
Man, I feel like you just broke me down a bit, man.
All right, so we're going to continue talking about Alton's list after we come back from our break, so please stay tuned. You're listening to Movie Talk on KWDC.
At least 1.5 million Americans and at least 5 million people worldwide have a form of lupus. Lupus can affect men and women of all ages. 90% of women are diagnosed with the disease. Most people will develop lupus between the ages of 15 to 44. I am Frankie Quarles and I was diagnosed with SLE lupus at the age of 16. It has affected my skin, joints, and also my kidneys. For more information about lupus and Lupus Awareness Month, go to the Lupus Foundation of America at lupus.org.
I'm New Jersey Governor John Corzine, and I should be dead. On April 12th, I was critically injured in a car accident where I lost over half my blood and broke 15 bones in 18 places. I spent 8 days in intensive care where a ventilator was breathing for me. It took a remarkable team of doctors and a series of miracles to save my life when all I needed was a seatbelt. I have to live with my mistake. You don't. Buckle up.
This is the sound of a bully at school.
Where'd you get the shirt? Colorblind and things?
And this is the sound of a kid telling her parents about the bully. If you don't hear about it from your kid, that doesn't mean it's not happening.
McGruff the crime dog here about how parents can tell if bullying is upsetting their children. Kids may avoid school, grades may suffer. Stop bullies with words to your kids, school officials, or other concerned parents, and at McGruff.org.
A message from the U.S. Department of Justice, Crime Prevention Coalition of America, National Crime Prevention Council, and the Ad Council.
Movie releases, DVD rentals, and more here on The Movie Talk on KWDC 93.5 FM.
And we are back. You are listening to Movie Talk on KWDC. I'm your host, Alan Jared Raquel, here with Alton Henry, Brian Seals, and Brett Seals. And we were just talking about the nostalgic films of our past, the films we watched as kids that influenced us to want to be filmmakers today. And we're on Alton right now, who's giving us a little scoop of his childhood, which was very unique, to say the least. Alton, what other films did you watch as a kid? I know you watched all the anime, and a lot of more adult films were the ones that inspired you.
Like Terminator 2.
Yeah,
Terminator,
no,
like
those.
Arnold Schwarzenegger being a giant not giant robot.
Not giant, but he's a robot.
A robot trying to save the world. Yeah. Well, the second movie was a good guy, but the first one, yeah. I grew up watching Terminator, but I'll play a little ball a little bit on it. Okay, like for the like really kids movies that really resonated with me when I grew up. Toy Story.
Oh,
Toy Story.
man.
Toy Story is my favorite Disney movie growing up,
Yeah.
and I also love that. What really shined for me was that movie was that Woody.
Yeah. Now, Toy Story. This is a very special film to me, and I think Toy Story is a special film to most people who grew up in the 90s. And this was actually the first film I ever saw in a movie theater. And to this day, it is one of my favorite films of all time. Every time I watch Toy Story, it reminds me why I love movies, why I want to be a filmmaker. Even though it's a very lighthearted film,
it's also the first movie to be the first CGI movie to be shown to people.
Yeah, and it's Pixar's first full-length film, and Pixar actually, not only are they my favorite animated film studio, they're one of my favorite movie production studios of all time. Pixar has come out with some of my favorite films since the release of Toy Story, and what's so special to me about the Toy Story franchise is that, like I said, the first film came out in 1995 in November, and it was the first film I ever watched as at a movie theater, and I was less than a year old at the time. And they spaced out the films perfectly to where it like kind of coincided with my childhood, because the next film came out 5 years later when I was 5 years old. I was more aware of things in 2000, and Toy Story 2 I think is one of the most underrated sequels of all time. I really love Toy Story 2. It probably is my least favorite Toy Story film just because the other two are so special to me. But I do really love Toy Story 2. In my opinion, Toy Story 2 is just as hilarious as the first one. Like its comedic content is absolutely brilliant. The father-son relationship between Buzz and Zurg, the relationship between the two Buzzes, the one who believes he's Buzz Lightyear and the other one who knows he's a toy. Some of that stuff is so brilliant, and Toy Story 2, what it did too was it also brought a whole new emotional level to animated films. that hadn't been explored at the time. You know, between Toy Story and Toy Story 2, we'd gotten more animated films CGI animated films, such as A Bug's Life.
That was good, yeah.
Ants was the first DreamWorks films, but Toy Story 2 was the first animated film to really hit that emotional level. Or the first CGI, I keep saying animated film.
CGI.
The first
computer-generated imagery movie.
Yeah, the first computer-generated film to really hit that emotional level was Toy Story 2, what with Jessie's background and her backstory. Yeah, I felt like that brought a whole new emotional weight and a level of maturity to animated films, especially with, you know, that conflicting her and Stinky Pete the prospector had dealt with that same loss, and yet they're dealing with it in two different ways. And that, you know, every time I watch Toy Story 2, it's actually a really thought-provoking film for me, oddly enough. And then, then 10 years later, Toy Story 3 comes out. And this... Now, I was 15 when Toy Story 3 came out. And, you know, I like every teenager, wasn't really looking back at my nostalgia as a huge part of my life like I do now. But when Toy Story 3 came out, I remember thinking, okay, I'm going to go watch it because I loved the first two Toy Story films. But I also went into the theater with the fact in mind that it was a kid's movie. And in my mind, I was thinking, okay, Toy Story 3, it's going to be geared towards kids. It's going to be a kid's movie, but I'll probably still enjoy it anyway. I walked out of the theater with a completely different state of mind because Toy Story 3, for me, is the film that kind of was the conclusion to my childhood. It was a film that was about growing up and about letting go of the past while allowing your past to be a part of you, but, you know, letting go of...
I kind of wish they stayed that. They're doing a Toy Story 4.
Toy Story 4 now.
Yeah. I totally agree. It brings out the emotions and kind of reflects on your own childhood and the things that you grew up with and the toys that you played with.
I mean, Toy Story 3, it was nominated for Best Picture.
Yeah.
I mean, how many animated movies are nominated for Best Picture?
Yeah, there's only been a few. That Up was nominated for Best Picture.
Up was the other one.
And Beauty and the Beast was actually the first animated film to be nominated for Best Picture.
That's pretty impressive, though. I mean,
yeah, definitely.
They have their own category for Best Animated Feature, and to be nominated for Best, that's crazy.
Yeah, and Toy Story 3 is one of my favorite films. It's only a really real rival in terms of my favorite animated film is the first Toy Story. And that's why, for me, the Toy Story trilogy is one of my favorite trilogies of all time. They're some of the most special films to me because they chronicle my childhood, really. I mean... You know, those three films came out in three completely different stages of my childhood. The beginning, that sort of middle point where you're like a toddler and you're still having fun, but, you know, I was just starting school at the time or whatever. And then at the end of my childhood when I'm 15 years old, you know.
You really grew up with Andy.
Yeah.
I mean, that's...
Well, we all did in a way.
If you grow up watching the films, you're going to grow up watching, especially how this film concluded, and
Yeah, and it's not something that just any filmmaker could have done. I mean, that's such a daunting task. I can't even imagine approaching that kind of task as a filmmaker to make three films that are so spaced out but still geared towards children and towards families, but to connect on a completely different level with the people who grew up with it in the first place, you know? And it's not every day you come across a franchise like that, and I think one of the only other franchises to ever do that was another one of the most important films in our childhood, and that to me was Harry Potter. What?
After the first two movies, they didn't. How many films are there? Like 8? No?
There's 8.
Yeah, I know. After the second one, they weren't that interesting to watch in theaters anymore.
Really?
Yeah, I just watched it on HBO.
See, to me, I love all of the Harry Potter films.
It was okay. I mean, okay, go ahead. I mean, it was okay.
I think what's special to me about the Harry Potter films is that they grew up with the viewer.
Yeah.
Yeah, they as we got older, the films got more mature, and they dealt with some more dark subject matter, which was a very risky move on their part to make the full-on transition from family-friendly films into full-on, you know, geared towards more teenagers and adults with the final films. And I thought the transition where that happens is with The Prisoner of Azkaban, and I thought it was a beautiful transition. With the first two films, they are completely child-friendly. There's a little bit of dark subject matter, but for the most part, it's geared towards children. With The Prisoner of Azkaban, Alfonso Cuarón took it to a different level. He brought in so much more dark subject matter and handled it with enough fun, and like he kept those whimsical elements that made this world feel so unique, and showed future filmmakers how to put a darker mood and a darker feel over the magical world of Harry Potter. And without The Prisoner of Azkaban, without that film being executed so perfectly, I feel like that franchise would have crashed and burned, because people wouldn't have been able to. I feel like that is something that filmmakers could have struggled with, is figuring out how to age that Potter franchise as the actors grew older. But they did it perfectly. All right, so we're going to talk about more childhood films after we come back from our break, so please stay tuned. This is KWDC Movie Talk.
You must be your fairy godmother. Yes.
It doesn't take a fairy godmother to tell you that the right fit means everything.
Good heavens, child. You can't go in that.
Children under 4'9" need to be in a booster seat because they aren't ready for adult safety belts alone. Remember that 4'9" is the magic number, and get your little pumpkin there safely in a booster seat.
Oh, thank you.
For more information, visit boosterseat.gov. This has been a message from the U.S. Department of Transportation and the Ad Council.
It's a scorching hot day. Imagine being trapped in a parked car. The temperature inside is rising. Now imagine that you're wearing a fur coat. Leaving your dog in a hot car is not only uncomfortable, it's dangerous. If it's too hot for you, it's far worse for him, because unlike us, he can't perspire to cool down, and within minutes, the temperature, even with the windows down a little, can exceed 100 degrees. So on warm days, please be kind. Leave your dog safely at home.
For more information, contact PETA, 757-622-PETA.
You're listening to the Movie Talk on KWDC 93.5 FM.
Welcome back, everyone. You're listening to Movie Talk on KWDC. I'm your host, Alan Jared Raquel, here with Alton Henry, Brian Seals, and Brett Seals. Today we're talking about the films that inspired us as children, and not all of these are family-friendly films, and that's what we're going to talk about till the end of our show. We're going to talk about some of the films that inspired us as kids, but weren't actually kids' movies. So, Alton, I know you got a lot of these, so why don't you talk about it?
Okay, I have to say Halloween was one of my inspirations to be a filmmaker. Yeah.
John Carpenter actually, for me, produced some of my favorite films as a kid. For you, the big one being Halloween. For me, the big one being The Thing.
The first Halloween that I've seen wasn't directed by John Carpenter. It was Halloween 20 years later.
I watched H2O.
Yeah, H2O. I ended up watching that with my family, and then that one's really scary. But I don't know, there was something about the character Michael Myers that was just so mesmerizing, just to learn. And then I got obsessed with it for a few weeks. Then when I found out there were sequels to it, then I ended up watching the sequels. And what stayed with me was the theme song.
The song one of the greatest theme songs.
Yeah, one of the greatest theme songs ever. And then, unfortunately, this movie wasn't that scary to me, but I still appreciate it for being a horror film, and for at its time, it was a indie film for the first film, and it really made an impact on slasher films these days. And you could see a lot of inspiration on what that film had to other compared to other films.
It's a very simple film. It's a very simple storyline, nothing too complex, but the way it's executed is perfection. And John Carpenter, like I said, he did make some of my favorite movies as a kid. They Live. I always love watching that one. But for me, the big one was The Thing.
Oh, that one's cold.
For me, the big one was The Thing. And the special effects is something like The Thing never scared me. It never actually terrified me, but as a kid, watching these monsters just rip out of people's flesh was so mesmerizing.
The effects in there was good. Yeah.
The Thing, in my opinion, might have my personal favorite special effects of all time. I think the only one that really compares is 2001: A Space Odyssey. I think those are, in my opinion, The Thing and 2001: A Space Odyssey, while being very different films, have my favorite visuals effects of all time.
Would you consider it as a kid's movie?
What, 2001?
Yeah.
No, it's rated G, but it's definitely not a kid's movie. Probably not even a movie I would have enjoyed as a kid. Yeah. I didn't see that until I was much older. But Brian, now I know we're talking about horror films right now. I can't see you right now, but
I'm hiding.
Brian, we're talking about horror films right now, and I know that you've mentioned previously that one of the horror films that inspired you as a kid was the Nightmare on Elm Street franchise.
Of course. So
tell us what about the Nightmare on Elm Street franchise personally inspired you?
Well, it just, as a kid growing up, knowing that there was a monster that would haunt your dreams was kind of terrifying to me, for one. Yeah. Not to mention, I grew up on a street where the corner street was Elm Street, so that didn't really help much.
Freddy's gonna get you.
But I had nightmares about Freddy Krueger all the time, but it always stayed with me, and it's just a character that I grew up watching and enjoying, even though they're corny because they were done in the 80s. Oh my gosh. But it lives on to me. It's like I love that character.
I had the same effect when I saw that movie when I was a little kid. I was afraid to go to sleep. I mean, I was up all night, and the next thing you know, I was thinking Freddy was going to come into my dreams. So I'm like, Freddy's going to get you.
Yeah.
Like, holy crap.
There's just so many movies, though. I mean, besides Freddy Krueger, I remember watching when I was little, like The Blob, the Night of the Living Dead.
Oh,
movies.
The Night of the Living Dead is one of the best ones for me. Like,
which one? The 1991 or
the 1960s one, the original 1960s. George A. Romero film, Night of the Living Dead. And this was actually the film that actually it made me aware of independent films and the difference between a big budget film and a low budget film and what you could do with a very low budget. The film was shot in black and white on really cheap cameras, really cheap film, and the whole film takes place essentially in one location, and it's a zombie movie that's told in such a different way. The film doesn't focus on blood and gore and special effects. The film focuses on the tension between the characters, and it all takes place within a house where all these characters who are surviving with each other, who are supposed to be helping each other against the zombie apocalypse, they start to tear each other apart. And that, I thought, was the most interesting part of Night of the Living Dead. And that's for me, one of the most inspirational films as a kid and even today. It definitely helped shape me as a film lover and as a filmmaker. And it's
I remember there were like two parts of the movie that really creeped me out. Where one, you actually see the zombies eating the flesh and it's in black and white.
Yeah.
And it looks weird. And the one where the little kid becomes a zombie and she ends up stabbing her. I think it was her mom.
Yeah.
Yeah, she ends up stabbing her mom, and the music behind it was just so chilling.
It's one of the and the screams. It's one of the most.
Oh gosh,
it was just perfect.
One of the most haunting scenes in film history, in my opinion. When I saw it, I was 8 years old. Really blew me away.
I'm gonna, if I ever record that, if I happen to record it, I'm gonna show that to a certain somebody.
Yeah. All right. So
a lot of people are probably wondering where our parents were when we were watching these movies.
Yeah. Oh, like they were watching TV. They're doing the same thing, watching Halloween and Michael Myers and Freddy Krueger, and they're like, "Arr!"
Yeah. So those are some of the films that inspired us the most as children. Not all of them are children's films, but I think that's something that needs to be recognized more often. Is that you don't have to hide certain things from little kids. When they watch these, say, without John Carpenter's The Thing, it never would have inspired me. In terms of special effects and it made me appreciate film in a whole new way. And definitely not a kid's movie. So that's our show today, guys. If you like listening to our show, definitely give us a like on Facebook. We are KWDC Movietalk. Also follow us on Twitter at Movietalk209. And one thing I want to mention too, if you like us on Facebook, every once in a while we'll do a random free movie giveaway or give away a digital download code to a film. First person to enter it gets the movie for free. So if that's not enough reason to like our page on Facebook, I don't know what is. That's our show. The next show coming up is...
The Get Down.
The Get Down, yeah. So please stay tuned for that. You're listening to KWDC LP Stockton. This is Movie Talk signing off.
KWDC LP Stockton.
That's not why you were here.
KWDC